I mean, this term is been thrown around recently, right? We say AI, obviously artificial intelligence. There used to be this push toward artificial general intelligence, as if we were going to get to some threshold condition where the computer became sentient, something like that. Yeah. That threshold condition used to be the Turing test. I think that has sort of fallen by the wayside at this point. So like, can we just start broadly just defining what is artificial intelligence? Is there still an AGI that we're shooting for?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. So artificial intelligence, great question. AI is not one field. It's like a macro field that has lots of things underneath it. And there's more engineering and hardware related sides to it. And then there's, of course, math. I just talked all about matrix multiplication and stuff like that. And then there's even information theory by Claude Shannon, which is why Anthropic named it Claude. They were naming it after him. So there's a lot of different moving pieces. And, essentially the old term for it was more narrow. It was more like speech recognition or predicting what the next word is going to be. This was very narrowly focused. And then eventually, to your point, the hope was to create a general intelligence where we would be able to not need to feed it information in its training data that it had seen before, but yet it can get you to the answer that you want to get to or that you should get to, again, without any pre-training. So this is what's exciting potentially about what DeepSeek is doing. It's at a $5 million training cost. There's no way they did what OpenAI did, which was basically shove the entire contents of the internet inside a giant computer. They're going about it a different way. And so that feels like it's taking us closer into the domain of AGI. And that's actually a really exciting time to be in intelligence in general, because that's an explosion.
Right. And so is the Turing test still relevant in that determination?
Yeah, so the Turing test is basically, can you have a chat with a computer without knowing that it's a computer, and will you be convinced that it's a human? And
that already feels that way with
LLMs.
LLMs.
I think especially with ChatGPT, there were so many, the AI got so many reps talking with people that I think it's picked up a lot of our nuances and tones, and it's almost indecipherable from human. I still think I can tell a GPT generated response when I see one on my X threads. But not always. And I feel like, they're going to get better and better. So I agree. I think Turing is probably not the best way to go about it anymore. Perhaps now you would ask it to build. Now I would ask it to try to build a system that can trick another AI into thinking that it's a human. So it's like a reverse Turing test. So yeah, I think that would be the next phase.
Interesting. So you're saying that we would need to create an artificial intelligence or an agent that could convince another agent that it was actually human. Correct. And that the one that did the tricking would be the sentient.
Yes. So it's like an inside out Turing.
That's so funny. Okay, what is this? And that's the difference between narrow and general AI?
Yeah, so narrow is basically you're good at one thing. And so we can pack your brain with the training data to be really good at that one thing. But the second we take the speech recognizer bot and we try to get it to recommend what Netflix title you should watch, it's going to fall down on the job.
Okay.
But AGI, theoretically, it could flawlessly move from any one of those domains, pattern recognition, predicting the next sequence, any of those things. It could do that without really dropping the ball at all.
So the differentiation between narrow and general is a gradient of context? Right?
Yeah, it's basically, do you have to modify the training data to make the machine capable of doing that? Or is it able to be exposed to a novel circumstance and perform as well as it did to the thing that you were previously training it on? So if you trained a robot to fold clothes all day, it would be a narrow robot that could just fold. But if it started one day, you came home and it was downstairs, spray cleaning things and petting the dog and doing things that were sort of like outside of its domain, you would wonder who upgraded it. And right. So I think that's the difference between narrow and AGI, just whether or not you have to explicitly shove the instructions for what you're doing into its head, or if it's able to sort of reason its way, just like how DeepSeek goes through a chain of thought. Can it kind of chain its thought its way into a successful operation?
So if it starts to adapt or evolve on its own,
yes,
that would be
So and that's the domain of reinforcement learning. So,
yes, and didn't DeepSeek make a breakthrough on that area?
Giant reinforcement learning. I mean, and one of the reasons we got connected, I think, is because Naval retweeted my explanation of it. And my basic explanation is OpenAI was using SFT, or basically fine-tuned, supervised, fine-tuned. It's like a math test with the question and the answer, and they give you 3,000 of them, and then you get really good at math that way. So when OpenAI tried to teach their kid how to ride a bike by giving it like a 7,000-page book on how to ride a bike, DeepSeek put a helmet on that little guy and said, "Go." And then there's actually another lab called Alibaba. They're over in China as well, and they have a model called Quen, Qwen. And like 1 week after DeepSeek, Quen came out, Quen 2.5 Max, and they seem to be doing something even more interesting, where they're using a combination of reinforcement learning and this fine tuning. And basically, they're using the fine tuning to make the pre-training at the reinforcement learning level a little bit more robust. And then they put the kid, so it's almost like read the manual, now go ride the bike, now come back and read the manual, now go ride the bike, even faster.
Wow.
And the idea that 2 Chinese companies came out with like breakthrough reasoning, both in the reinforcement learning domain in the same week, almost some people in my community said that was an intentional, almost an attack, for lack of a better word, on American AI. But basically, they had some secrets in the lab, and then they did an intentional release at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, the nationalism being ascribed to these tools, I think, is going to fall by the wayside pretty damn quickly.
I agree.
Yeah. That's interesting. So then it sounds like they're catering to different learning styles almost. Like the reinforcement learning is like a kinesthetic learning style.
Yeah.
Whereas the SFR, I think you said it was like reading the manual, is more of a visual auditory type thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, traditional reinforcement learning is all about an agent. And it's not like the AI agents of today's conversation. It's just more like a rat in the maze as an agent. And it has 2 outcomes. It either finds the cheese or it finds a dead end. And then the next time you drop it in the race, it kind of remembers a little bit which way to go to get to the cheese. And so you just keep dropping it in. And then every once in a while you change the puzzle and you make it a little bit better at finding the cheese. And and that's old. Like that's been around for 50 plus years, that whole concept, maybe even 70. The issue was, and there's many, but sometimes in life you don't get the reward right away. The cheese isn't there, right? Yeah. So same thing in chess. Like you can make an amazing move, but it still takes you 13 more moves until you checkmate the other guy. Well, the old challenges with reinforcement learning is that delayed reward was so broken apart that they couldn't remember, like, well, which of my last 13 moves was the move that got me into this place? Right. And it was ascribing too much value to the more recent moves. So what we're seeing now is an expansion of this reinforcement learning where they're using, transformers, which is that matrix multiplication math I was just talking about. Because transformers are way better at looking at what's called long range dependency. So remembering those moves 13 moves ago. And so long story short, we're using the newest technology of today to augment the kind of like older technologies. And then those 2 things are creating feedback loops, which are making our current boom that we're seeing.
It sounds like, it mirrors, at least the visual I'm having is if you imagine people in like Top Gun flight training, right? The best fighter pilots in the world. Well, they're out riding the bike, so to speak, flying the jets. And then they're also in the classroom, right? They have to learn every tool. They have to learn every component on the plane. Like they know it top to bottom, basically.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Right.
And so those 2 methods or learning styles, I guess, then reinforce one another.
Completely right. And I think that's the big breakthrough that we're seeing with Quen, and we're probably seeing with DeepSeek as well. It's possible that DeepSeek did exactly the same thing, just Quen was more articulate and explicit about what it is that they did. But we're looking at a real game change. And I think we've rounded the corner and we're heading towards AGI now, because once you have this sort of organic growth of intelligence where the machine is iterating and getting better because it's reasoning its way through, then you can start to climb like the staircase of intelligence. Up. And that's a Tim Urban quote, by the way. But, as you climb it, the steps get shorter and shorter because, the intellectual gains that you've made from the previous step are underneath you. And so
diminishing returns.
Yeah, but in a good way. It's almost like.
Yeah. So it sounds like we're getting into some technological paradigm that causes us to reevaluate the nature of intelligence itself, right? That it somehow sounds to me like there has to be a path of goal-directed action, right? Like you're at A, you're trying to go to B.
Yep.
And then the intelligence component is correcting the errors that that occur along that path, or maybe even changing path. I've heard intelligence defined a couple of interesting ways. One was Jeff Booth. He said that intelligence is simply error correction, which is good. It's broadly simplistic. It does imply that there's some aim or goal or objective in mind. Otherwise, you can't have an error, right? If you don't know where you're going, then you're never lost, right? You're just wandering. So it implies that there's a purpose or a path or an aim. Another one was, I hope I can paraphrase this correctly, that, it's been said that there's many paths to the top of the mountain. So like the ability to select different paths to reach the same outcome.
Right.
If you hit a dead end 3 different times, you find the 4th, 5th, and 6th alternatives to that objective. Well, we were trying to define artificial intelligence.
Yes.
How do we even define intelligence?
Yeah, it's a great question. And to your point, there are a lot of different definitions. I think, like, for instance, how do we define what makes human intelligence special? Never mind just intelligence. Intelligence, but let's just talk about it. And the old definition used to be, if you use tools, like if you could put yourself out of your body and extend yourself by grabbing a stick and
extended phenotype.
Yes, unfortunately, then we started fighting birds who were grabbing sticks and poking grubs out, and we found puffer fish on the noses of dolphins, and we found all sorts of interesting uses of tools. So I don't think it's that. And then the next theory, which I think is a good one, is we're the only metacognitive people. We are the only ones who think about thought. Now, we don't really know that. Like, we've never cracked open a dolphin's head and said, like, hey, have you ever thought about what you thought about yesterday? But it does seem reasonable that we're probably one of the few people to do that. I would say that humans are incredible pattern recognizers. And although we are very poor at exponentials, like we can't see around curves very well, boy, oh boy, do we know how to walk a straight line forward. And for most of our history, that has been good enough. But as you pointed out, we're heading more into an exponential time. So it's going to be interesting to see if our intuition starts to fail us, or if we'll have to rely more on those machines, going back to my friend, because life is going to become higher and higher dimensional, which means the spreadsheet is going to have more columns added to it. And the number of columns that get added per unit of time is only going to get bigger. So it's just... we're going to get to some place where it's almost like if you're not augmented by some form of intelligence, you're probably going to be going a lot slower than the people around you.
Yeah, such a good point. Is this the metacognitive capacity of human beings? Isn't that related to our use of natural language?
Totally. I mean, it's a bootloader for intelligence, isn't it? The second you put information into words, you're encoding it, and then what a hack that is, because then you can start moving it around and manipulating it and evolving it, and mutating it, like in a good way, not like X-Men, but like actually like adding powers to it. It's one of my favorite things actually about knowledge, how it's building on top of each other.
But it's hard to distinguish where. I mean, obviously animals don't use natural language, but they do have communication systems. It seems like maybe a difference in degree rather than kind. I mean, you hesitate to say that because then it's like, oh, well, humans are just animals. We're just advanced animals. And it's like, we do seem to participate in something that's a higher order cognitive faculty, probably just, even just evidenced by our position on the food chain, frankly, right? Like that we have dominated the world so thoroughly,
and we were like endurance hunters. Like we had an interesting path to where we are. Like we're definitely smart, but there's animals with bigger brains by displacement. And we're definitely fast, but there's much faster animals, and there's much more fierce animals. We just seem to be the ones who could figure out traps and figure out tricks, and we figured out husbandry and getting animals to do what we wanted. Then we started to shape the earth to our will with agriculture. So there's definitely something special going on with us. I don't think I'm going to see dolphins doing any kelp farming anytime soon.
The capacity to cooperate across space and time flexibly and in large numbers. We just bring more force to bear. Operating in concert.
We got more nodes.
And information moves faster because we use natural language, I guess. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.